The Boston Bruins are well known for having, very little in their prospect cupboard, and picking 4 times this year, they still have very little, but let's take a look at who they took. To start things off, the Boston Bruins took, in my opinion, one of the riskiest picks in the first round in Dean Letourneau. I have to admit that Dean Letourneau is a complete wild card. I'm just surprised at how many people are also not admitting the same thing. Granted, he had a lot of points this year. I am aware of this. I have seen him score goals. It is a thing that happens. The problem is that he's playing Canadian high school hockey and is 6'7". Whenever I've seen him play at that level, he's just bigger than everybody. He can get inside positioning on players because he's almost a foot taller than most of the other players on the ice. Just by virtue of having longer legs, he can get up and down the ice better than most players at that level. I watched both of his USHL games during Christmas break, and I thought he was kind of underwhelming, but a decently smart puck mover with a great wrist shot from mid-range. But he just didn't get a chance to play in the offensive zone all that much because he was behind play a lot of the time. I would have really liked to see him in the USHL down the stretch, or at least more than he played, but unfortunately he had an injury in the closing time of the season. Look, the way I see it is that in Ontario you have the OHL and the OJHL. Most college guys, historically, go to the OJHL before going to college, or they go to the USHL. Usually, they're not playing Canadian high school hockey. And this is going to be uncharted territory because the only other Canadian high school player that was drafted in the first round, to my knowledge, was Mark Jankowski, who turned out to be a good AHL scorer and maybe a depth NHL forward. I think Dean Letourneau is maybe a bottom 6 center that you just put in front of the net and he can raise hell. He's got some good hands in tight. I just feel like there's more risk than people are leading on here with Letourneau, and I don't know. I wouldn't have used a first round pick on him. Again, I'm happy to be wrong. In 5 years, if he's playing top 6 minutes in the NHL and is the next Tage Thompson like I've seen people compare him to, I'll eat my words. But I also know that I'm not the only person who in the hockey world believes this. So I think a few teams were surprised to see Boston take the plunge this early, but he wasn't going to be going much later than this if they didn't take him. It may take a few years and we'll see what he turns into. There's skill, there's size. He didn't move the needle enough for me to put him really high on my list, let alone in the first round. Am I wrong? Maybe, but we'll see. At 110, they took Elliot Grunwald, and I had not seen as much of Grunwald as others this year, and other people seem to really like him, in the most boring way imaginable. He is not a very exciting player, but he gets around the ice decently well, he monitors play decently well, he closes gaps decently well, he's not a bad defensive player by any stretch. He's just a meat and potatoes guy who goes over the boards and plays hockey as a defenseman. He's not the most exciting player, but if at 110th overall you get a guy who ends up a bottom pair defenseman in 5-7 years, you've made a good pick, and as a guy who could just eat a few minutes in a game, I could see Grunwald being one of those guys. Boston has had quite a few of those types of players come through their system, and it has worked in the past. So maybe this is just the other one. He just wasn't the most exciting guy for me. At 154th, they went back to Ontario hockey beneath the Ontario League, and went with Jonathan Morello from the St. Michael's Buzzers of the Ontario Junior Hockey League. And I saw Morello at the World Junior A Championship this year. I was kind of underwhelmed. He's been productive with St. Michael's this year, and that has some level of value. But to me, he just struck me as a big dude who uses body positioning decently well to protect the puck, because he has to. Not a lot of pace in his game, not the most amount of skill. He's got a pretty heavy shot, which is good to see. I just think there's a very long trajectory ahead for Morello, and I wasn't the biggest fan of him when I saw him this year. There were other bigger players that I might have taken a swing on than him, but he's got the advantage of youth. Maybe he's a little bit physically underdeveloped, and again, you'll leave him in college, and maybe there's going to be something there. Then at 186th, in my opinion, they drafted the Swedish version of Elliot Grunwald in Loc Johansson. Big, a little lanky, not the most offensive guy in the world, but he's boring. He sits back, he plays effective defensive hockey, he's got a decent shot from the point, I would say, but again, another player that is not humongously exciting, but he is kind of humongous. So maybe there's going to be something here in the future. It follows the general trend for the Boston Bruins in this year's draft and many of their previous drafts, so time will tell, and I can't say it's a bad pick that late in the draft, and he'll be able to play pro hockey for a while, so we'll see what he turns into. So for me, the Boston Bruins are going to get a 3C. So This comes down to a number of different things. They drafted, to me, a lot of boring but decently effective players that may turn out to be third pair guys. Dean Letourneau in the first round, to me, I just can't help but feel that there is a lot of inherent risk there. I don't know how I would have the confidence to take a Canadian high school player in the first round, especially when a guy like Liam Greentree went 1 pick later and a few other guys went 5-10 picks later who played at much higher levels and really drove great results. We'll see what happens with Letourneau over the next little while, but for me, that on its own is a massive amount of risk, especially for a team that lacks a lot of things in their prospect pipeline. But nothing is impossible, and we'll see where he goes in college. The rest of the class, they're big, they're kind of boring. Maybe there'll be something in a few years after a pro hockey experience or in college. I can't say they won't be, but this wasn't the most exciting group of players from Boston, and over the last few years, that seems to be the trend. So that's it for the Boston Bruins. If you liked the video, you can check out the video description where we'll have our link to our Fanatics affiliate code, where you'll give us a small kickback on anything you buy in the shop. Or you can go to Scouching.ca, where a subscription will get you access to an exclusive Discord server, as well as plenty of really cool data tables for drafted and undrafted prospects around the world, and plenty of other cool stuff like an exclusive blog and early access to content, and plenty of other fun stuff. So you can check that out at Scouching.ca. So with that, we're done with the Boston Bruins, and we move forward to the Detroit Red Wings, the last team on the list.